folks. Welcome to Snowpal Podcast. Our guest today is Al Schuster. Al is the co founder of Sample Finder. Al, thanks for taking the time to chat.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Before we get into the topic we're going to at least get started with today and have a conversation about it for the next 1 hour or so is using experiential marketing to save the retail industry. But before we get into the topic, can you just give us a brief intro about yourself and your company, Sample Finder?
Okay, so my name is Al Schuster. I'm the co-founder of Sample Finder. Sample Finder is currently in development. We are the first app to exclusively promote experiential marketing events like in-store demos, street teams, pop-up activations directly to the consumer and encourage them to go out to physical spaces such as like brick-and-mortar stores and like stadiums and things by providing them with points and monthly contests for going out and engaging with the brand.
Thank you. I just pulled that up quickly on the screen so folks can check that out. So without further ado, we can get into the topic. But actually, before we go to the topic, I'm going to ask you a few things so I understand your product and the tool better. You mentioned in-store experiences, right? So let's start the conversation there. So we live in a time and age where a lot of it is done online, right? I mean, things are delivered. I cannot remember the last time I went grocery shopping, to be honest with you. It's just that things that, there's one of the tools I've always wanted to actually have. And I think once some of these companies launched it, I was ready to, pay the extra markup. You pay like 3 times more to buy a banana than if you were to go to the store. But some of us still, we got used to doing it. So we're doing it. So the retail experience has changed quite a bit, right? So it's great that I would like to learn a number of things from you during our conversation. You said your product is built to bring users to the store because the in-store experience needs to be maintained. Before we go into that, Al, where do you see the future? I'm sure you're the founder, so clearly there's a problem you're solving here. But I want to get an idea as to why do you think people are going to come to the stores more than they have been since the pandemic?
I think they're going to be coming less to the stores. We would love people to continue to go out and shop, not just for the hassle and the inconvenience of needing to go to a physical location and park and wait in line and deal with the weather and other elements. But what we want to do is kind of see retail spaces become experiential engagement spaces. Where you can try brands, you can experience them before you go out and buy them. So where I see retail going within the next 10 to 20 years, and it's kind of a very bold prediction, is I honestly see us not being able to shop in like grocery stores or supermarkets anymore. And the reason for that is that, especially the younger generations, Gen X, Gen Alpha, however you want to describe them, they're so used to doing everything on your phone. I see like grocery stores, supermarkets, other big retailers as places that you either go and, pick up your online order, or that you go and just, buy things off of a kiosk and then they have them brought up to you. And I see this being very exciting of an idea for the retailers because it's going to save a ton of money for them, specifically in areas such as, they won't have to pay for in-store signage as much. They won't have to pay for like in-store music. The loss prevention costs will dramatically decrease, and other things such as, that's pretty much it, actually. All those extra costs that go into creating the customer experience in the store are going to go away because people aren't going to want to go through the hassle, like you say, the convenience of actually going to or having your items delivered to your home is going to be a lot, easier than having to go out to the store and buy things, even if things are 3 times as much because of all the additional fees. And the problem for consumers is that's really going to take away a lot of choice. What's going to wind up happening is the pain of returning items that don't meet your expectations are going to be a lot less than a lot more than the pain of just keeping them out. How many times have you ordered something online and it's like, well, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but I can live with it. Like if you order one flavor of ice cream, like you order chocolate and they send you half and half by accident, half chocolate, half vanilla. You're like, well, whatever. Instead of having to go through the whole process of trying to return this pint of ice cream or this gallon of ice cream or whatever, I'm just going to keep it. I can live with it. And that level of complacency by the consumer is going to be kind of expanded on by the stores just saying, okay, well, we're going to be able to kind of reduce the quality and the variety of choice that consumers have in the process. And let me break that down into kind of two parts. First of all, in terms of quality, when you go into a supermarket, you can look over the fruit and select which fruit you want. You can look, at the items on the display, like the seafood and meat and poultry and things like that. And you can kind of select from what's in the cold case. When you order online, you're not going to kind of have that same ability to have choice. You just, select half a pound of ground beef or, a whole chicken or something, and you just get whatever they bring to you. The other part of it is the lack of consumer choice when it comes to shelf space. Shelf space is obviously a premium. Brands want to be, eye level. They want to have the good placement because they're situated right next to all of their competitor brands. Like if you think of all peanut butter sitting next to each other, hot sauces sitting next to each other, anything where you have all the competing items right next to each other. And what I like to say is, there's kind of the running joke of no one ever looks at the page 2 of the Google results. Well, the same thing goes for any type of online shopping. When you put in a search result, these big e-commerce platforms and the retailers, they're going to push to the top of the search results what they want you to buy. So it's going to be a lot less opportunity. It may not be as direct. You might think, oh, well, technology is going to bring convenience. But it's also really going to kind of reduce choice for the consumer very unintentionally, deceptively. And I think that people aren't going to kind of realize what they have until it's gone, if that makes sense.
It does. So, really quick, so I understand Sample Finder. What is the problem that we have today? Like we're talking about retail and the experience of buying something that we want to buy. How are we buying today? And how is Sample Finder going to make that better or different?
Well, we're in the experiential marketing industry. The founding company behind Sample Finder is Polaris Brand Promotions. I'm the president and owner. Polaris Brand Promotions has been around for about almost 9 years now, and our primary core business is doing experiential activations where we staff brand ambassadors to go out and represent brands, either products or services directly to consumers. And a lot of where our business operates is in the brick and mortar retail space. We go into stores, we set up table, we sample product to consumers, we put the product on the table, encourage them to buy, we give away merch and swag and discounts, either that can be, used during the event or maybe a coupon they can use wherever they want. In addition to that, we also have pop-up experiences at like sporting events, concerts, music festivals, things like that. So what we're seeing is, as consumers are, moving away from that in-person retail in-store experience, the opportunities for us to promote new brands, especially new brands who may not have budget that the larger brands do, instead of having the opportunity to get that, what we call either liquid to lips or try it before you buy it, if they don't have that experience, then there's going to be less choice and less opportunity to introduce new brands directly to consumers. And a lot of the times in our industry, our clients, being the suppliers or the brands, whatever you want to call them, they rely on the natural foot traffic of the space. So we usually do a lot of demos like on a Friday afternoon from like 4 to 7, or Saturday afternoon from 12 to 3, when you're going to have the most people out at the stores doing like their weekly shopping, and their volume. So that being said, we really rely on that foot traffic. And what Sample Finder is going to do is it's going to promote events directly to consumers that they can go to any time or day of the week. And they'll know what is being promoted to them. Like you get a free sample, a free, drink, or a free maybe like a piece of a consumer packaged good. They're also going to know what types of giveaways and types of promotions. They're also going to get the opportunity to experience new brands. So what our goal with Sample Finder is to help save the in-store retail experience by driving consumers back into stores to get value that they would not get just from the online shopping experience alone. So, and what we'll do is we'll reward them by giving them points. Like when they check in, they get points. When they write a review about their experience, they'll get points, as well as other ways like, referring friends, trivia contests we're going to do on the app. So the goal is to have users, be engaged with the brands while collecting points. And then we'll be doing monthly giveaways and contests where people like who have the most points will get a certain prize, or anyone who collected points during the months will be entered kind of like a lottery system. The more like points you have, it's like the more lottery tickets you have, where if we draw a random number based upon each point that was earned, the consumer, the user of the app, has the opportunity to win some additional prizes. So we kind of want to gamify it in a way, but at our core, what we want to do is try to provide consumers with that in-person brand experience and show them what they're getting. We're not just collecting data from them. We're not just, trying to, get coupons into their hands. We really want to create experiences for our clients.
Okay, so how does the interaction work? Do I download the app and am I searching for things that I'm looking to buy, and then it tells me who's selling it, how close they are, and I drive to that store? Or how does my interaction happen with the Sample Finder app? Does it start in the house, or does it happen after I'm at the store when you're actually there in front of the table trying to make that sale?
It can happen wherever you are. How we are going to operate Sample Finder is when you open up the app, you're going to see a list of the promotional events that are not only happening the closest to you in distance, but also the closest to you in time. So for instance, let's say you're a brand new soda brand to the market. And you have a demo coming up like in an hour across the street. That's going to be at the top of the search results. Even though a big name soda brand, I don't need to name any, I'm sure you can think of some, even if they're doing an event maybe a mile away in a couple of days, they're not going to feature as high in the search results because our search results aren't going to be in a pay to play format. You're going to see a list of what's happening the closest to you and the soonest in time. And you're also going to be able to search for different categories like health and beauty, like sweets and snacks, beverages, things like that. So you're going to be able to see on a map view what's happening around you closest to you. So you really have an opportunity to see like what types of sampling events and demo events are happening in your area, close to your home. I've almost said like you could, make a scavenger hunt out of Sample Finder to see, okay, I'm going to walk around my city today and try all these new different brands and things like that. And also, really just, get people to go out and, physically visit these places for more of an incentive that they're currently getting. A lot of times I've done demos, as have, most of our corporate team for many years. And, so many people say, oh, I wish I knew about this demo before, or I would have told a friend, or, I don't have enough money to buy this product today, but, if I'd known this was coming, I would have brought more funds with me to buy it. So we're really kind of trying to make the retail experience fun and engaging again by offering these unique and exciting brand experience opportunities.
Okay. I think I get some of the idea. For the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to ask a bunch of random questions. And again, I'll feel free to interrupt me and throw some questions back at me as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
I'm going to play the devil's advocate in some of these occasions just to hear both sides of the story from a thought process standpoint. So let's say I'm looking to buy something. The idea here is not so much that one of the closest malls to where I live is Tyson's Mall, right? And about 10 miles west of Washington, D.C. I think it's one of the busiest malls in the country, if I'm not wrong. I think even as malls in the area are shutting down, we see that there is at least seemingly more traffic. When I looked up online some time ago, I think they're actually doing more sales than they did last year or something. But that being said, the type of stores that are open at the mall, they are quite different, right? I mean, I can see it change all the time. It's experiential stores like the ones you mentioned, where not every one of them is open, but I know that they have signages saying, hey, you can play these games or have some fun with your family and friends. It's not just them trying to sell some product, but they're trying to sell an experience, because that's probably where they reckon people are going to be going to these places. Now, keeping that in mind, as context, is the idea behind Sample Finder that people are not just looking to go buy something that they need, but they are actually wanting to look up, actually download the app, do some search there and want to have the experience of buying something as opposed to needing to buy something? Is there a fundamental ask here where your user base that you're targeting is not just people who need to buy something so they drive up to the store and buy it, but rather people who want to spend 3 hours doing something fun and they're not really looking to necessarily make a purchase of any kind? Having fun and the experience is probably more important to them than the purchase of the product itself, which is why you're expecting them to download the app and do the search and see what's going on and then go to those locations. I just want to make sure I get the idea behind this correctly so I can frame my questions more sensibly.
No, of course. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. We often say that anyone can use Sample Finder. If you go out to a brick and mortar location, anything from a bodega all the way up to like a Neiman Marcus, you can use Sample Finder. But what we're trying to do is target very specific verticals and a good number of them. For instance, anyone who likes to attend live events, like if you're going to a sporting event, well, I wonder what little promotions are going on in the concourse around the area. What can I stop by and grab something for free at? We've done things in like Pepsi Plaza representing brands, which is at the Lincoln Financial Field where the Philadelphia Eagles play. And we'll have a line like 20, 30 people deep that want to, play cornhole or play some other game of chance, to win a prize, whether it be a t-shirt or like a gift card or something like that. So people do like these experiences. So what we want to do is kind of enhance their normal everyday shopping patterns, their travel patterns. For instance, one thing I've said about Sample Finder is, we are going to use this to, hopefully, drive traffic to stores that have more experiential engagements. Like, for instance, if you have retailer A, where you go to every Friday to do your shopping for the weekend and the next week after work, you go there every week without fail. And then if you see on Sample Finder, they're trying a new chocolate brand, I'd love to try it, that's happening at retailer B. So, instead of doing your shopping at retailer A on a Friday night, you might stop by retailer B on a Thursday night, and you might do all of the rest of your shopping there as well. We also want to attract people who like to do like coupon clipping, who like discounts, who go out of their way to, go to stores that offer them, freebies and discounts and things like that. So there's a lot of ways that, a lot of different potential target audiences that we're going to target through this app. But it's all about people who, already enjoy these things, already use these types of technology to enhance their experience and kind of use that to send them to locations where they're going to get a better shopping experience. To your earlier point about like malls dying, I've seen malls like, some of them, they've started to outfit some of their former like anchor, major kind of chain retailers into gyms. Was it up at the King of Prussia Mall right outside Philadelphia? They opened up a Netflix house into one of the former like large big box retailers that was one of their anchor stores. And the point about all this is like, I think the big problem is, as all these little small stores want to close, you're going to see a lot of interest in just knocking these down and building multi-mixed communities, like multi-use communities. I think you can take the existing retail structure and not only add experiential stores and experiential engagements, but also utilize an outlet like Sample Finder to really help, drive consumers in. Like, I was kind of thinking about use cases for Sample Finder, and one of them that came to mind is like even like a high-end boutique clothing store could use our app. And, the first thought is, well, how are you going to give out samples of clothing? Well, you obviously aren't. But, for instance, maybe you have like a special event where, maybe like a Thursday night for a couple of hours, you have like a meet the designer event where everyone who comes gets like maybe like some hors d'oeuvres, a free glass of champagne. They get to meet the designer and they get maybe like a free like branded item that they can take with them. Not like a full dress, but something that complement that's branded. And maybe if they shop in the store during those hours, they get an extra like 20% off. So we're giving away items of value. We're creating a brand experience. We're giving them a discount. We're giving them something that they can take home with them. And it's not necessarily like trying like a bite of food or a drink or something. That's the way retailers can really kind of save their structure. Because, not to be Mr. Doom and Gloom or anything, but if all these like chain retail stores start to close more and more over the years, we're going to have a massive kind of overflow in the market of empty commercial real estate space. And if it's kind of happens all at once over the period of a couple of years, it's going to hit the economy pretty hard. It's not just a matter of just saving our industry, but there has been all this infrastructure built in, whether it's restaurants or grocery stores or boutique places, small independent clothing outfits and different different stores where if the pain of like having to go and shop and walk around and select stuff has to be like less than the pain of just using an online service. And by adding those like in-store experiences, I think it can really drive traffic back in. There are stores who offer classes, who offer like cooking classes or some type of class to learn about brands, or some of the Total Wine. They'll do different classes every month where you can try different wines and different spirits and things like that. And if we start bringing more of that back in, it's really going to enhance that in-store physical experience by offering something that you just cannot get through shopping through a website or a smartphone.
Okay, very interesting, right? And thanks for sharing that. I'm going to, again, all of my questions are just to play both sides of this, right? I agree with everything you said there, but I'm intentionally going to force myself to disagree with some of those things just to hear your thoughts on it. And I'll tell you, Al, I spoke to somebody else recently, the founder at of Murphy Door, an incredible person. They sell these hidden doors to high-end customers, and I had a very interesting conversation with him on the podcast recently about that business, right? That's I highly recommend folks to go check that one out as well. And so I'm very interested in retail and how it's changing. So the crux of what you're saying there, Al, correct me if I'm wrong, is retail as we've known it over the years has changed, right? It's changing, it's continuing to change. See, there are at least 3 malls 10 miles away from where I live. I always ask myself why there was a need to have 3 malls all these years. Some of my questions are being answered because I see 2 of them not doing very well. And this is in the DC metro area, which, I happen to live, I believe, Loudoun County, which is the wealthiest county in the country. So, you're talking about a fairly affluent population, yet these malls are struggling, right? But Tyson's is one of them that seems to be pulling it through. Now, keeping that in mind, that's one thing. The second is, as AI comes into play, as tools and technologies evolve, and they're evolving ever so rapidly now than ever before, you are able to have some of these experiences digitally as well, right? You can take your camera, take your phone out and see what the TV is going to look like on your living room and maybe move it around and get this feel. So the idea behind companies doing that is they recognize that retail, the e-commerce sales are just continuing to grow, and people are not going to these brick and mortar stores, not making these physical trips. So they're trying from their side, they're doing what they can or going beyond what they can on many occasions to bring that experience into your living room, into your kitchen, into your bathrooms, so you know what your bathroom upgrade is actually going to look like. Now, if I were to tell you that I would, while on one side, while you're betting on a retail experience that needs to be more enriched, if someone were to play the devil's advocate and ask you if you were fighting the tide, meaning people are not wanting to drive anywhere, people are not wanting to go to the store, but now you're giving them incentives to go to the store. Now, how do you expect that to pan out? Should the incentive be big enough for them to drive, or is the demographic different where it's mostly for maybe a younger population that wants to enjoy that experience and not just get to buying what they're buying because the product is not as important as the experience is to those people?
Yeah, what I'm hoping for is to see a world in which both, brick and mortar retail and e-commerce can kind of exist side by side. I don't want to see the death of the brick and mortar experience by any means, even though it looks like it's the way it's going. And we're definitely fighting against the tide. To your point about, seeing like the television, you can place it in your room. You're talking about one aspect or one element, which is the sense of vision, of sight. In our world, as human beings, there are a lot more senses. There's the sense of taste, the sense of touch, the sense of smell that you get, especially when you do a lot of like food and beverage style in-store demos and things. Yeah, there will be technologies which will help to enhance the consumer experience, like you said, by visualizing something in your home. But again, these are all kind of manufactured artificial experiences that help you get an idea of what the experience will be like, but won't actually be able to replicate that for you directly. People want to go out. Sports stadiums gets packed. I mean, to your argument, and I do like this kind of back and forth of, playing devil's advocate, but I mean, anyone can watch a football game or a baseball game or any of the other major sports on their television, and yet we have packed out stadiums. So your team is good, of course, but you have packed out sports stadiums game after game because people want that experience. They want to physically be there. They want the excitement and the energy of the crowd. That's even though we've had, for decades now, televisions, they do not replicate completely that in-person experience. People want that. People want, I mean, you can listen to, songs on your computer speakers or on your phone or on your AirPods or whatever, but people still go to concerts, so, people do want real world experiences. It's just the problem that I'm seeing is, the people who have the money, the people who have these facilities, excuse me, they're either going to try to drive business away and force those retailers are the ones that provide the retail experience. They're going to either drive them out of business, or if they own those types of like venues, they're going to change them to make them more profitable. And I know we've had a chain that recently went out of business around the Philadelphia area called Iron Hill. I think they're found in like Delaware, and they had about maybe a couple dozen locations or something. And I could tell year after year the menu just got smaller and smaller and smaller, and then out of nowhere they just completely shut down. Now I don't know why they shut down. I mean, you can always speculate, like private equity, maybe just wasn't producing the revenue that they wanted, but you know again, really, like you can always order stuff online, but you do have that in-person experience. And as it becomes cheaper and easier just to do things online, it's either going to force people out of business, or they're going to change their business model to become more profitable by getting rid of the retail experience. And that's what we kind of want to preserve, if no other reason than to have simple human interaction with brand ambassadors, with brands themselves. And we're not Luddites. I think that's the term. We're not anti-technology. A sample finder is technology. We want to use technology to help kind of promote and enhance the retail experience, and help provide an outlet for consumers to find those experiences so that they can go and engage with brands directly. So, instead of using instead of using this technology to continue to push in this direction, we're trying to use it to enhance an existing industry and existing in-store experience.
That makes sense, which is kind of what I was trying to ask there as well, which is the experience is not only equally important, perhaps sometimes it's more important because you want to get out of the house, want to have a good time, and then end up perhaps making a purchase as a byproduct of that, even possibly, right? I hear you. The thing I want to ask you next, Al, is the retail experience, like you mentioned, is changing. But given what you mentioned there, are we then talking about high ticket items where people are expecting, you seems fair enough to expect that people want to enjoy what they're doing and have their experience to purchase products that are not things that you buy 3 times a week or 4 times a month, right? So what's your ideal customer profile? What is the general demographic that you think would be the best fit? And what are the types of products? Like, what are the prices of these products? Are they high ticket items, meaning like $2,000, $3,000 products? Or are we talking about even like $50 products that people might actually want to go out and purchase by going through this experience?
We really, in our agency, run from, I mean, we're representing a protein bar that's about maybe $2 to $3 retail, all the way up to tequila brands, which might range in the $50 to $70 kind of target pricing. Experiential marketing works, at every kind of level or price point. It's a demo, it's a trial. It doesn't matter what it is. You're giving a small, like a quarter ounce of a spirit, or you're giving away like, a small bite of food. A perfect example is like some of these auto shows. Auto shows are basically just an experiential activation, but it's a ticketed kind of public event where you go around from car to car and you can sit in the car, maybe not take a test drive or whatever, but you can ask questions about the car. You can see all the new exciting features about it, but it's an experiential activation. You're sharing that experience. And, cars obviously 50, 60, 70, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the experiential industry kind of covers every type of product and service you can imagine. Even if that experiential activation is something very technical, something with a very small kind of like purchasing base, like if you're selling like a high end, like HVAC system, or you're selling like a yacht or something like that, where, if you go to a show, you have brand ambassadors who will explain, the product or even the service. They'll, try to collect information. They might give you some, merch or swag. They'll share some brand info with you. So really, our industry kind of covers everything. And when it comes to Sample Finder specifically, we're not only, offering opportunities to, taste products, but Sample Finder, like I mentioned with the clothing store, any type of kind of brand can do this. Even if a car, maybe like a dealership wants to do a special event where it's like, you can test drive a super high-end car and you can have some appetizers and maybe get a special discount or maybe get some t-shirts or some kind of like, merch or swag. You're still creating an experience to get the consumer into the car dealership store, to get them to see the different types of cars, the different, experiences, even if it's either sitting in them, talking with a sale, speaking with a brand ambassador who's there to kind of, meet the guests and introduce the cars to them. So experiential activation really hits kind of every product and service you can think of, potentially to one degree or another.
Thank you for that. We're halfway through. For the remaining half an hour, I want to kind of shift gears and talk more about the technology side of things, right? What you're doing and why you've made certain decisions. For instance, because our audience is predominantly an engineering audience, so they'll be curious to know also how you've done some of the things that you're doing here. The first question, Al, is about the product, right? About the choice of tech, meaning the app itself. I had a chat with the founder recently, I think Sai Dhanak of Deduction, and one of the questions, we had a fairly detailed conversation about it, was how to present the platform to their audience, right? What it is that they were actually doing. So in your case, I presume you have a mobile app, right, on the App Store and Play Store. Is there a web interface to this, or is it all on the app?
There's going to be no web interface. It's meant to be used on the go. We haven't launched the app just yet. It's in development. We are beta testing it. We're looking at launching it around like the first week of April. So as for the app itself, the entire experience is going to take place in the app. There may be some external notifications like push notifications, text messages with advertisements that are targeted based upon, about like the user's interaction with the app. Like if they complete a review or a survey about a brand experience and they rated it high, we can then bundle all of those high ratings of people who really like the product or bought it and then send them supplemental advertising kind of anonymously. Like we send it based upon our client's criterion. We're not just selling the kind of the email list or the phone number list or the name list or anything like that. So everything will take place. We're looking at launching it in the Apple's App Store and the Google Play Store. Everything will take place in the app. I believe you can have your choice of either enabling location services or putting in your zip code in order to find out what's happening near you. Generally speaking, that's how we're going to kind of launch the app. In terms of additional features and functionalities, we are going to have a calendar function where you can see the different like demo and events, other events that you've selected that you want to add to the calendar. We're going to have a favorites list so you can list your favorite brands. You can see all the points you've earned, the historical activity. Like you can go back and, a lot of times people are like, oh, I tried this thing at the store, but I forget the name of it. I wish I could remember it. You can actually select a brand to your favorites and you can look back upon your prior reviews. So the next time you go shopping in a retail environment, you can then go and look at the items you've tried before to help you make your purchasing decision.
Okay, makes sense. I have a question or two there, but before I do that, I'm going to have a shameless plug here. We are a product company, right? We have a few different products, and one of the products we have, Al, is APIs published on, say, AWS Marketplace. That's to help companies like Sample Finder or other companies go to market in quick time, right? So I will probably socialize that with you after the podcast, but you can look up Snowpal APIs on AWS Marketplace. We publish a number of APIs, like we have like 1,600 endpoints or something. So you can build your systems quicker and cheaper. Using AI and our APIs, the idea is for you to go to market in quick time. So you may or may not even need to have a backend team. And if you did have a team, you'll need much fewer people and spend less time building your backend systems, right? That's one of the products we have for what it's worth. But the question I want to ask you here is, let's say we have a mobile app of our own on the App and Play Store. We built that about three and a half years ago, which is a project management platform, right? We built an app because we felt the need to build an app at that point of time. But I mentioned one of the guests earlier, remember Sai Dhanak of deduction.com. He had mentioned their choice that they don't have a mobile app. They have a web app, but that's not necessarily the main point of interaction. They actually have everything done through emails, right? All of the integration or interactions that happen with the customers is through email. And when I asked Sai why they made that decision, or if they would have made the same decision like 3 years ago before the advent of AI, he had some interesting answers. And one of the things, I'm paraphrasing what he said, Al, was he said there's this download fatigue where he's talking to people and they don't actually want to download anything on their phones anymore. I mean, that doesn't hasn't stopped the number of apps on the app and Play Stores from growing. It's just increasing by the day. But the fact remains though that people are a little bit more hesitant to download. They're more careful or cautious because they have a proliferation of apps on the devices. So some part of it, maybe whether you agree or otherwise, I want to get your thoughts on what was your choice of going with a mobile app in lieu of other platforms or interfaces, for instance, right? Whether it's email, whether it's web, whether it's other things. Did you talk about discuss a few different options and then you arrived at a mobile app? Or was that the natural first thing to go with because that made the most sense?
I think our goal is convenience. We want an interface that consumers will be able to use on the go. We have map features. We have check-in features where you get points, where you can write, the goal is to write a review while you're at the store right after you try the product so you don't forget about it, things like that. We considered like a mobile-friendly web page or like a platform and stuff. But we don't want to have to put our users to the inconvenience of saving to their home screen. In terms of web, when I think web, I think home computer, laptop, desktop. I don't want to have something where you have to be reminded. With an app, we can do push notifications, we can do pop-ups, we can incorporate some of the other methods that you mentioned. But what we really want to do is have the ability to have this technology on the go. Like for instance, as we build additional phases of this project, we're going to add new features. And one of them is maybe incorporating the pop-up. If we have someone who does a lot of chocolate tastings, who kind of rates things highly, we could have a little push notification heads up. There's a chocolate tasting going on about a half a mile from you in an hour. Stop by if you'd like to try this and get a discount. So we really want that convenience that an app offers and that, a smartphone will help us provide without having to kind of build out additional features of technology to kind of replicate that or just have it in addition to it for the sake of that.
Makes sense. I'm not a product manager, but I play that role in our company as a product company. Yeah. So I probably have 10 feature requests for you already on the app, and I'll probably talk to you after the call as well. So that's good to know. So let's talk a little bit more about, so you mentioned the need for an app and people's interactions and how they want to be able to interact on that. Let's talk a little bit about how you built it, right? So you are launching in the next month or so. Best wishes. Hope everything goes according to plan. And you're in this day and age of doing it. We launched our product, say 4 years ago, the first product, and then the next one, and the third one, and the fourth one. So we built it before AI was so much in the news. And now we are building our next API while AI is very much in the news, and NVIDIA just reported earnings like about 3 hours ago, right? I'm curious to catch up on what happened there. But AI is lock, stock, and barrel in the mix of things. Building software today is very, very different from building software 2 years ago, or even 6 months ago, or 1 year ago. So, how are some things? I mean, in other words, I have a bunch of random questions for you here. One of the things is how much of the code that you actually have, and again, some of this, you may know off the top of your head. If not, we can go to the next one. Not a big deal. How much of the code that you think that's been written for your app right now, Sample Finder, Al, was human written versus code generated using one of 15 options that's available out
To tell you the truth, I do not know exactly. We hired an amazing app development company that has gotten very, very well regarded apps, in the different app stores. We wanted to go with the human to have that human interface. As much as I'd love to say I'd love to try a few AI options and throw in some prompts and see if I could build something myself, but we really want that human accountability. In our, software, they've asked, and I've had people ask me, like, do you mind if we use AI in different projects? I'm like, I don't care as long as it works. That's the most important thing, because the problem with AI is you need to have someone experienced who can fix all the little minor bugs that AI can get wrong. And of course, people can get things wrong. I understand that. Computers can get things wrong. Bugs can happen. Having the technology kind of overseen by a human, I think, is the best way to approach AI in the short term. If there is something in the future that can run completely with like a 99% success rate in terms of using prompts to develop AI, I'm all for that. But we wanted to start off with the human approach. I mean, granted, we kind of picked our app developer about 4 months ago. And I tell you, app development and AI has changed so much significantly in the last 6 months that it's been quite a change in terms of like how AI is being used now, and to kind of, as a tool for the coding process. So we didn't really think it was going to be as big when we selected our app developer. Clearly it is now. And, again, if anyone wants to use those resources, if they're successful and they help save time and provide quality, faster, then I'm all for that.
Okay. And as a company that is in the business of building software, and as somebody who's been talking to a lot of the founders, I can tell you that in the last 6 to 12 months, a little bit more maybe, things have changed seismically, right? Seismically, right? I've been building software for like 25 years, I think now, and it's never been the same. It's not one of the stagnant industries. That being said, Al, the pace at which things are changing has been unbelievable, right? Like, in other words, I've talked to a number of founders who've never been coders themselves or never ever written code, but they actually ended up launching products and services without even hiring a developer, right? That's the world we are living in right now. They're not going through the proof of concept, but I've talked to people who have gone all the way through to production without hiring either a developer or too many developers, for instance. So based on your experience, based on what I've learned, say 70-80% of the code can be generated. You don't need developers to write that first line of code anymore. The product manager can do it, the project manager can do it. You really don't need the software programmer to come into play till you're like through 2/3 of the way through and building a particular feature. So the cost of building software has dramatically dropped. I mean, are you seeing that in reality? In other words, are you seeing that much savings in working with this provider? Whereas if you had built the same thing 2 years ago, do you think you would have spent like 4 times or 6 times more? What is your take on how much less money it's costing to get something like this done today?
We carefully vetted probably about 2 dozen developers before we chose. So we haven't really looked at the cost now versus the cost 6 months ago versus the cost 2 years ago. I really can't answer the question. I wish I could. I mean, because we don't have like a time comparison. We just looked when we did. I know the developer that we chose was probably like, it wasn't certainly the cheapest. It was probably about double the cheapest. But, at the end of the day, I think anyone who wants to build anything, quality is going to be the most important thing. You need to have quality. You can't launch a buggy product. So regardless of what the cost is, I think, if you use AI to help develop it, you can do cost savings, at least for the client end of things. But you still need to have, like you said, that human come in 2/3 of the way to clean everything up. I don't think AI is ever going to fix all of its own bugs. I mean, if you can build some agents that can cross check and double check everything that happens, all the bugs in an app, well, that's great. I mean, I'd love to see a world in which we have AI that can pump out bug-free, software. Where I see it going now is obviously you're in a massive race for user base, for revenue. I watch a lot of AI videos. I know one of my favorites is Julia McCoy. She's awesome. She does like daily videos with an AI avatar. And you know, I can see from what I've heard, the costs are definitely going to go down by having some of these things built. There are billions, if not trillions of dollars being poured into software development. So it's kind of like the early adopter discount in a way. So these AIs are going to need to remain financially competitive in the short term to drive that market share away from traditional development services. And one example I have is like Uber and Lyft. When Uber and Lyft came out, they were trying to be a disruptor in the, against like taxi cabs, public transit, like I guess like other types of transit. So they were offering super cheap discounts and probably running massive millions and millions of dollars of losses. But they did that to grab as much market share as they can. And now obviously Uber and Lyft is certainly nowhere near as, inexpensive as it was when they first launched. Because eventually, you're going to have to stop raising venture capital and raising, rounds of funding. You actually have to turn a profit. You have to see some results from this because, market share is only going to do so much for you. So in terms of AI, you're going to have that early adopter discount, phase where you have all these AI developers who want to build the next big thing and become billionaires. So to do that, you're going to need to pull, market share away from traditional, like development services. So you're going to see a cost savings now, definitely. How that's going to play out in the long term in terms of, okay, we've gotten so much of the market share away. Now let's raise our prices because we're the only ones on the block and we do it so much better than everyone else. Make sense?
Yep, it does. Thank you. We've got like 10 minutes left. I'm going to give you a break from my questions and ask you I have a couple more to ask you, but before I ask them, do you have any questions for me?
I guess I'll kind of throw the same question back at you because, in terms of maybe not the price point, but, how you see AI long term changing not only the nature of development, coding and app development and any type of software programming, but also to the broader economy, because you kind of have one of these two nightmare scenarios in that so much is being invested in AI. If the AI bubble bursts, the stock market's going to tank. Like the AI is the only thing holding up the economy. On the other hand, AI is going to become so good that we get rid of most human labor and everyone's going to need to go on universal basic income. Otherwise, there's literally not going to be any jobs and you can't sell things to people who have no money to buy them. So I'm just kind of curious the direction that you see AI going over the next, I'd say like 5 to 10 years. So it's more like 2 to 5 years right now with how fast it's developing. Where do you see it? What do you see the long-term impact being?
That's a great question, Al. I'll give you like a 4-minute answer, so hopefully it makes sense. I'm actually going to record a podcast that has 40 points to answer that exact question that you asked me, because every 2 months or so, as I talk to people, as I talk to many founders and distinguished guests such as yourself, I collect my thoughts and do a summary of what's transpired in the last 8 weeks or so, right? So in my last 8 weeks of having these conversations, I've learned a bunch of things by doing it ourselves at the company as well. I'm going to publish that shortly, but I'm going to give you a short answer to that podcast that's coming very soon, maybe in the next day or so. That's a great question. Let me start by saying that I've been building software, like I said earlier, for two and a half decades, I think, coming up. I've worked for large product companies, small product companies, startups, before we started our own company years ago, and we've launched many different products in the last 5 years, right? So my only experience has been in the space of building software. I don't have other skills, so I don't have a second option, even if I wanted to. So I can share that experience with you and the audience here. Software development has never been stagnant in my experience. I used to work for Oracle years ago. Things moved very quickly. Compared to other industries, this being in software engineering, I always felt that things kept moving, right? You had to keep yourself up to date. However you did that, if you didn't do that, you're going to be dated. And you don't have the luxury of being dated when you work for product companies, especially smaller ones, because they don't have enough money for 3 people. So they're going to have one person do 7 people's jobs, right? That being said, the pace of innovation, the change that I've seen, a lot of us have seen in the last 2 years, Al, has been unprecedented, right? It's incredible. Every time Claude Anthropic, every time the CEO talks, I'm excited. He's a brilliant person, obviously, and a very nice guy too, who's very honest and gives you both sides of the spectrum. On one side, they keep launching these new models that's taking away not jobs, but entire industries, right? It's
Hmm.
wiping out entire industries. On the other side, he speaks to what the impact of this is going to be. So I'm going to paraphrase some of my learnings from these readings and whatnot, right? And even Meta, for instance, they're not hiring that many junior engineers anymore. Folks who are getting out of college are finding it difficult to find employment. You don't need college diplomas and degrees for 9 out of the 10 things you do, unless you're a doctor or a lawyer, or the government mandates that you have some kind of certification. There's no real good reason to go to college anymore. I was in college for 8 years. I wish I could go back on every single one of those years and get that time back. So things are changing. They're changing rapidly. People are going to be looking for work. More people are going to be looking for work. Where you needed 20 people to build software, you need like 3 people to build that same software today, right? So one option is to have the 20 people and do 6 times more, but not everybody has that many features in their minds or documented on ticketing systems. Even AWS had to let go of people, 10,000, 15,000 people every month or so, right? It's not like they don't have much to do, but they able to do a lot of what they want to do by having a lot fewer people. So that's, I think, the reality of what we're looking at. Things are changing. You need fewer people. You need fewer developers. You don't need as many testers anymore. Product managers can be part time. The whole composition of an engineering team is changing dramatically. So, and I think personally speaking, anyone who doesn't agree with that either is in denial or knows something more that I don't know, for instance, right? And I live in Northern Virginia where you have all of these data centers. Every time I get out of my house, there's a new data center. Huge ones, massive data centers, right? Now, you talked about malls, and if they go out of business, what happens to all the retail? I don't know what the average size of a mall is in terms of square footage. I've got to believe that it's a lot smaller than an average data center. I'm not even talking about a 1 gigawatt data center. I'm talking about like 250 megawatt data centers, right? They are huge properties, huge buildings. And if if AI happens to be hype, which I don't believe is the case, I mean, it's going to be bad, really, really bad, right? So we've got to hope that it's not hype, and it doesn't look like it's hype because we are able to do more things at Snowpal just by not having as many people. We never had too many people for that matter, but we don't even need the people we had as many as we had because marketing is done by these Meta and Google tools, and you don't even have to create these graphic anymore, the graphic anymore, right? AI is already creating the graphic now. So things are changing lock, stock, and barrel, right? I think I am in that school of thought where I want to believe the Anthropic CEO, the Meta CEO, or Jensen Huang or Dr. Lisa Su. Well, very much in that camp where things are changing and you can't deny that, and you're going to have to come to terms with it. So, on the other side, what happens if you can build software quicker, which you can? You can build software cheaper, which you certainly can. Build software with fewer people, a lot fewer people than before, which you certainly can because people are doing it. We are doing it as well. Lot more people are going to have to look for work, right? Which means what I'm hearing, Al, is more people are starting to live their dreams or are going to be put in a situation where they're going to have to live their dreams. People who are like looking to find employment because they paid their bills and had their benefits and whatnot may not have the job anymore, so they're going to have to become entrepreneurial, right? So you're going to see a lot more businesses come into play, is my prediction, in the next 6 months to 2 years. I wouldn't dare think anywhere beyond the 2 years because things are changing so fast. But in the next 6 months to 2 years, I think a lot more software is going to be launched, whether it's mobile apps, whether it's web apps, backend systems, all kinds of AI tooling. You're going to see a proliferation of all of this come into play. And I think like 90% of them are going to not exist in 2 years because they're just not good enough. But the companies that do sustain this period, much like the restaurants who survived the pandemic, I think might be in pretty good shape. So at least if I were to see the crystal ball, I think AI is making a seismic difference. More people are going to have to look for employment. And I think the number of jobs that's going to be lost is, I think, nowhere near any of us is even willing to accept, is my thought process. I could be wrong and I hope I'm wrong. But from everything I'm doing at work, at our company, I feel like we don't need all the help we needed. Like we had Some companies charge $400 to publish a podcast, right? Just to publish a podcast that we record in the company, Al, I have to hire somebody and pay them $400 per podcast. With all the AI tools we're using today, I'll tell you after the call as to how long it takes us to publish the podcast, and I will tell you how much money we are spending, right? So everybody, a lot of the companies that are in the business of publishing podcasts, better start looking for something else to do. I don't know. This is going to be a more business that they can be in, right? So I think that's at least what I'm seeing through my experience. Some of it makes me anxious, but the truth is the truth as I want to believe it, right? So even as a developer and an architect, I ask people, Al, would you hire, like, one last thing I want to ask you. Hopefully some of my ramble here made some sense, but the last thing I want to ask you there, Al, is given what you're seeing happen in the industry, do you see a need for someone like Krish? Krish has a 20 some year experience of building software, designing, architecting, engineering it, deploying it, and doing yada yada yada. If I had to make you pick one of two answers which are dramatically different, Krish, not really. We don't need you anymore because AI is doing plenty of good stuff. There's very little need for people like you. Or, nope, we certainly need you guys still, right? Which one would you, what is your natural inclination to pick? Which one would you pick?
We definitely need you. We don't need as many of you, but for me personally, and look, in 6 months, 6 years from now, I don't know. My opinion on this might completely change, but like, I want human oversight. And Heather Johnson, who is our co-founder of Sample Finder, she kind of handles the UI, the graphic design, everything you've seen, all the pictures of the kind of the prototype app. That's all her vision. I've told her many times, like, I want to use AI to make us more productive. I don't just want to use AI to replace any, human per se. Maybe not hire anyone additional, but at least not fire anyone, because I'm always going to want someone who, human being to provide perspective. Like, I might think I have a great idea, and the AI might say, "Hey, Al, this is the greatest idea ever. You're going to make $1 million off of it." I want a human being who can think outside the box. I want a human being where if I say develop, this app, and I spend a few hours giving prompts and guidance and whatever, if there are bugs, I want a human to fix it. I want a human being to say, "Okay, Al, well, if you went with this AI development program as opposed to that one, you'd be spending much less, money on tokens, or you'd be able to get more productivity." So I think having that human ingenuity and imagination, when you give up that, you kind of not only give up control, but you give up opportunities. So I definitely want to see a world where, maybe the mundane tasks fall to the wayside, but, it kind of opens up opportunities for people to, kind of be forced to be smarter, to be more imaginative, to think outside the box. It's kind of like when you had automated, registers in supermarkets. You might get rid of the, employee who, all they need to do is, scan items one by one and then put them in a bag and, take your money or, process your credit card transaction. Those people are going to be replaced with the technicians and the developers and the designers who need to then go and work on those machines, write the code. So by getting rid of some of those lower entry jobs, obviously we want to have enough jobs for everyone to help support everyone and not have a poor economy. But, forcing people to become smarter to have those higher end jobs, and not only to be smart enough to like write the code or analyze the code, but also to provide those ideas and insight and experience. I think that's something that AI is never going to be able to replicate. So you're always going to need to have a human being at some point in the process to be able to review things, test things, and not just rely on an agent or an algorithm just to do the test and blindly follow it. I mean, Lord knows, even in law, which is probably one of the most complicated fields in the world, you keep hearing stories about, they had AI write a motion citing cases, and those cases never even existed. The AI just made it up, and it looked so good that they showed it to the judge, and the judge gets really pissed off. Like, okay, wait a minute, why are you saying these cases that never happened as case law, as precedent for me to make a ruling on your motion or your request? And I think if we start to blindly just follow AI and assume that everything it does is right without having a human being have the ingenuity and experience to cross check it, I think it's going to be very toxic and very dangerous.
Very, very good point, Zarel. And we need more people like you.
Thank you.
I think the humanity needs more people like you. I hope there are more people like you. One side of me hopes and believes that there are. Other side of me is like money and business always reigns supreme. So, we'll just see how things pan out, right? But what you shared there was absolutely brilliant, right? Completely agree with you. Anything else that you want to ask me?
No, no. I mean, just to touch on what you said, I think it all is summarized by, companies, they want to save their money, and the workers are probably one of the biggest expenses any company can have. Well, when you suddenly get rid of all the workers, who are you going to sell your products and services to, because none of those workers have a job or have money to buy it? So having that ability to have a worker base, a human base that has that ingenuity, I think is going to be critical. Just to kind of follow up on what you said. But no, I mean, I think that question was the one that's really been kind of pulling at me. I guess the only other question I'd have, I know we're just about out of time, is like, at what point do you see, either in a year, 5 years, 10 years, when we presumably have AGI, artificial general intelligence, self-aware or not, who can learn to do basically any job? Like, do you see that coming? Do you think we're hit it, or maybe in some server farm somewhere we've already built Skynet or some other self-aware artificial intelligence? I mean, do you see the point at which human beings do become irrelevant when it comes to quote unquote work?
That's a great question. Do you have another 10 minutes to chat?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had just a food question for you before we end, but this is another great question. I think I saw a video of Elon Musk from years ago, if I remember correctly, where he said that there's going to be cars where there's going to be no pedals or steering wheels. And then the host who was asking this question, started chuckling, and then the audience had a hearty laugh at that time, right? And this sounded like humor, and it was not too long ago, right? It's probably a decade ago or maybe a little bit more, and it sounded preposterous. And Musk is a brilliant man, but there are things he could say where it probably is preposterous, or other times maybe it is not. I mean, it's one of those people where you can be on both sides, agree or disagree. But the truth is, less than 10 years later, there are cars, right, that are self-driving. Now, are they perfect? No, but are they getting really good on a daily basis? They certainly are. So I think none of this is preposterous, and we live in one of, not one, I think the best nation in the world, right? We put our minds to it. I think things can happen, right? I moved here when I was like 21 or something from India, and if I go back 20 some years and I've had a choice to go to any part of the world, which I did when I came here, I would pick no other country but still the exact same United States of America, right? It's a brilliant country for many different reasons. Right now, we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect, but we are better than any nation that I can think of. And the reason I say that is, if you put your mind and creativity to problems that you're solving, nothing is literally impossible. I mean, Jensen Huang, who I absolutely love, right? He's had humble beginnings and he runs the world's largest company, right? NVIDIA. And I've read a lot about what he said, watched a lot of what he said, and there's no part of me has any skepticism, right? When I hear him talk, when I hear Dr. Lisa Su talk, when I hear the Anthropic CEO talk, or even when I hear Zuckerberg talk, for instance, I think they're coming from a very honest place. Now, sure, business, they may do things right, wrong, ugly, I don't know, but I have no reason to believe that these things cannot happen. So I think 10 years down the road, if we were to be able to predict this, Al, I think I would put my money, not in investment advice, again, like I say in all my fintech podcasts, in that space where things are going to be done by machines and robots a lot more, a whole lot more. I think we are lucky to be in that time frame. Like if this happened 25 years later, I would have been retired and I would have just sat out and be watching like I'm watching a movie. I think we have to be blessed to be part of this change, right? Being here alive in 2026, making an impact and being in that space of building software is an incredible privilege, absolute privilege. Doesn't matter what you're building, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter what, as long as you're passionate about whatever it is that you're doing, I think there is room. Like there is room. It's not easy, right? But running a business is never easy. I mean, I understand that. But I think to all the skeptics who think up these hyperscalers are going to run out of money. These data centers are going to probably shut down in 10 years, and you're going to have millions of square footage being empty, and there's going to be apocalypse. Maybe it can happen. I don't know, but I would be super surprised, right? So I think we might be in a situation where there's a lot of people, like 10 billion humans on Earth, and there's only 1/3 of the amount of things that we can do as humans. So we've got to be more creative, and maybe there need to be more businesses, and maybe we have to go to Mars. I don't know, but I don't know if we can just live life the way we've lived in the last 10 years, 20 years, because I can see that impact in the space of software. Claude launched a few models like 2 weeks ago. The IT companies in India tanked like 12 or 14% on a given day, right? Because everyone's like, what's going to happen to consulting? What's going to happen to managed services? Do we need that many engineers to do it, right? I mean, there is a real impact. I mean, IBM dropped like 14% like 2 days ago because Claude said they can take COBOL code and rewrite it something else, and IBM had to come back and clarify, right? So there is reactions happening, and you're seeing hundreds of $billion being in the line of fire. So unless somebody thinks they're smarter than Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, Dr. Lisa Su, and everybody else put together, I would rather be wrong and be in their camp than be right in a different camp. Is just my 2 cents.
Excellent. I mean, I kind of agree with you there. I definitely want to see I am concerned there's a bubble. I definitely want to see the point at which we start to see some consolidation, where there's revenue being generated, where there's really good practical things that can be done with technology. At the same time, I mean, it's the natural progression of things is to kind of want to do things as efficiently and cost effective as possible. Replacing the human element, I'd love to see it as a benefit to the population, not so much as like a financial collapse or an economic disaster. So, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I want to try to follow up more myself. And, that's the thing about our company. It's like, I'd love to be able to go in and say, okay, well, what can we make more efficient with AI? What can we do with AI? And the very nature of experiential marketing is very much anti-technology. For our industry, it's all about that human connection, which is something that we want to not see die in the whole race to not only utilize technology, but not necessarily use it as advantageous to the consumer. It might be, a lot of things might be more convenient, but, you get the loss of choice. You get the loss of, options and quality and things like that. I mean, look at some of the fast fashion trends. In fact, I saw something, I think it was on one of like the Style Theorist channel, where it's like you see these AI generated clothing, and then you order it from a site and it looks gorgeous, and then you get it, and then someone's like, okay, how do I make this off of what AI generated? Because someone bought an item, and now that I have to create that in the real world, it might look beautiful, but you're losing the practicality of it. So, having that human insight, I just don't want to see that be lost. I want to see AI really badly be a really a net positive for the human race. I'm just concerned of, again, snowballing into, well, let's fire all the workers. Okay, no one's buying anything now because no one has any money. Okay, well, then you've destroyed the economy. But yeah, you've got a really awesome computer program that can do amazing things that better than any humans. So it's like, well, if it's like, why need the humans? It's like, well, what about us humans? So it'll be interesting to see. I'm scared. I'm excited. I know there's a lot of opportunity out there, but I'm just hoping that it all turns out the best for as many people as possible.
And I think you said it beautifully there. Last question to you, Al, is if you have to go to your ideal dinner, what are you eating, and what would your choice of appetizer, entree, and dessert be?
Oh God, I love barbecue. Give me a good like barbecue restaurant with a nice beef rib and an IPA, like Church Perpetual out of Pennsylvania. It's my favorite beer ever. Those two, and maybe a chocolate chip cookie for dessert, and I will be in heaven.
Okay, and what are we talking? Is it like $100? Is it lesser? Is it more?
Probably about 50 to 60 for all of that put together.
Okay, not bad. Thank you very much. Any closing comments before I'm just going to reintroduce you and the company to our audience before we call it wraps? And please hang on after we are done here for a moment. Al, any closing comments to our audience?
Well, thank you for listening to everything about Sample Finder. Heather Johnson, our co-founder, and myself are really excited about it, as well as Stephanie and Claudia from our operations team. They round out our corporate team members. And also thanks for kind of listening to my thoughts on AI and where technology is going and how it's going to impact not only retail experiences, but the human experience as a whole. If you want to find out more about Sample Finder, just go to samplefinder.com. You should see a pop-up that show you can enter in your email address, and anyone who enters in their email address will be the first to find out when we launch. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much.
Yep, we'll include the link to your LinkedIn profile and to Sample Finder so our audience can definitely check that out. And as somebody who's launched our first product like about 5 years ago, I know how exciting this time is. So best wishes to you and your team, and hope everything goes according to plan. And if there's anything that we can do here at Snowpal or anything that you want to ask Al, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, folks, thanks to Al Schuster. Al is the co-founder of Sample Finder. Definitely go check out the app and download it and start using it once it launches in the next month or so. With that, we'll end this podcast here. Until next time.